This is Francine from Kaleidoscope Heart Scraps. Today I'm going to show you a bargello technique to make a background on a card. This is something that I learnt fairly recently and I think it's really cool, so I was going to show you how I did it. So here's a couple of cards that I made using this technique. This one is using some of the Current from the Deep Blue Sea stamps, which I really love. And this is a multicolour one, which I love my bright colours, so it's just something different. And this is an older retired stamp set that we had on a special at one stage. So today we're going to make something similar to this one, but instead of using blues I'm going to use a whole lot of greens. So let's get started. First of all, what you need is a piece of 4 by 12 cardstock. I've cut that at 5 1/4, so this will end up being a base to use for our card later on, and this is the piece that we're going to work on initially. So that piece is 4 by 6 3/4. You will also need a mat for your card, so this piece I've cut at 4 by 5 1/4, and you will need a card base. So I'm just using our value pack cards and envelopes. They come pre-scored, so they're really easy just to fold, and you've got your card base ready. You also need the stitched rectangle frames. Today we're going to be using the larger one of those. And I've got a couple of different stamp sets that I'm using. This one, D1927, called Palm Paradise. We're going to be using that for our stamping. And for our sentiment, I'm going to be using this D1283 Satin style. It has lots of different choices as far as sentiments go. So you also, of course, need to have some inks. And the inks I'm using today are mint, sweet leaf, green apple, clover, and evergreen. So let's get started. I'm actually going to move my Versamat out of the way, and I'm going to start just on our all-purpose mat, which of course is lovely, and you can get it all messy and it's not an issue. So we'll start with our 4 by 6 3/4 inch piece of cardstock, and we're going to go from lightest to darkest ink. So we'll start with the mint. Open that. I like using this brush, and I should have just confirmed that I don't have too much other green on it before I start. So just going to go across the page and ink it up. You can, of course, do this as light or as dark as you like. Next, I'm going to use sweet leaf. Next, we're going to use green apple. I'm going to use some clover. And the last color I'm going to use is evergreen. go back to the sweet leaf and try and blend that in a bit better. I think I'll do a bit more of the mint as well. So that's the basis for what we're going to do. I of course now have a lovely mess here. I can use my stamp chamois, which I've just wet, to dry that up a bit. Then next, I'm going to bring in my trusty little cutter, and oops, that one's not going to work, sorry. This one. And we're just going to cut this into 1/2 inch strips, and we want to make sure that the colors are graduating in this direction. So we're starting at 4, so we're just going to move it to 3.5. Cut a 1/2 inch piece like that, then 3 inches, another 1/2 inch piece, 2.5. So next piece we need is that 4 by 5 1/4 piece that we had cut before. I'm going to actually put it this way. Sorry, this way? No, this way, okay. And just going to put a little bit of Tombow, the liquid glue, across here, and we're going to stick that on. And how close to the edge you do it is up to you for your first piece, because what we're going to do is actually alternate where the pieces go. So this next one I might put more of the dark green on. And for this one, maybe I'll put more of the lighter green. So as you can see, we're just putting the background back together, but we're alternating where the pieces go. So with this technique, you want to make sure that the color that you really like is the one that's in the center, because that's the one that you're going to see the most of. And if you've cut your pieces correctly, you should just nicely fill up that piece that you're using as the back. So I might just press that down so we make sure that it's nicely stuck on. So what we want to do is, of course, cut off all these straggly pieces at either end. So there's two ways that you can do that. You can just use the scissors and trim across in line with that bottom piece there and there. Or what I'm going to do is use my thin cut. Now I do want to make sure that I'm getting the center. So this thin cut cuts a frame around the edge, but it also makes a stitched rectangle on the inside here, and that's the piece that I want to use. So I'm going to stick my piece on top so that I'm in between those two stitched lines and I'm fairly evenly centered in the middle there. So I'm just going to go off camera and cut that. So I've cut that piece and I'm going to take this off, and as you can see I lose all my little ends and I get this. So I don't want all those little pieces, although I'm sure you could make something out of that, use that, glue those on and make a sort of a mosaic with that. Now the only thing I want is this center piece. So my big shot doesn't apply quite as much pressure as it used to. So I'm just going to trim this down on the cutting line. It's actually cutting through quite easy, so it was almost cut through, just not quite. Of course, it is cutting through 2 layers of paper, so I probably should have actually run it back and forth just to make sure that it cuts, but this is very easy to follow the cut lines. And even have some little bits there if you wanted to use on something. Okay, so that's our background. Then we're going to stamp it up after this. So I'm going to bring back my Versamatch and I'm going to put it on the foam side for stamping, and I'll put some paper down here so I can stamp off the page a little bit. Now I'm not sure whether I'm going to do it this way or this way. I think I need the dark side at the bottom. Kind of looks like the jungle and the darker bit. So I'm now using that Palm Paradise, and I'm going to just randomly stamp some of the leaves around the edges. So I'm going to use the darkest ink that I had, which was the Evergreen, and just do some stamping, and we'll see what happens here with this. So I'm making this up as I go. So I haven't actually used these stamps before. So I'll just condition them and ink them up. I'll just stamp it first to make sure that it is all inking. Okay. And I'll do some of those so that they're going off the edge a little bit. Put some on this side too. So that's going to be the background of our stamp, of our card, sorry. Now, I did stamp some of this little flower before on canary cardstock and cut it out, and then I just put a little bit of our old Shinhan markers, the what colour is it? Golden yellow, just in the center, just to make it a little bit darker. I also stamped the bird the parrot, and coloured him in. So these are the colours that I used. The dull green blend, the light green blend, the true blue, and the ice blue blend, and the golden yellow from the old Shin hand markers. But these are the new tri-blend markers that have the dark, mid-colour and light, and I blended in some of the colours on the wings, etc. with the tri-blends, and that's how I did the head as well, with the greens and the blue. So I cut that out already, and I was thinking I want to put that bird on here somewhere and put a few of the flowers around as well. So then what we're going to do is put that on that mat. And the last thing left to do is put a sentiment on. I was thinking I was going to put happy birthday, but I think I might put that up the top there. So I'm going to show you what I did the other day. I was looking for ways to sort out die cuts and things that I had already cut that I might want to use later. And I'd bought this box from IKEA, and I thought, oh, this will be fantastic. The only issue was it didn't really work. But it does work for all my white scraps. So I actually sorted them out to 1/4 inch or less in width, to 1/2 inch, to 3/4 of an inch. These are 3/4 of an inch. These are all 1 inch wide, and these are all the other scraps that I can use for slightly bigger pieces for stamping and cutting out and stuff. So with my happy birthday, I think I need a piece that's about this big. Perfect. So that's my little hint. So I'm going to stamp that in evergreen as well. Let's just make sure this is stamping okay. Yes. So we'll put that in the middle. And I didn't quite stamp that in the middle. And that one end is crooked. I'm going to chop this off a little bit. And I'm also going to chop a little bit off the end, and this is my OCD coming out because it's too wide. Okay. So So put that up there. And in fact, I think I will put a little piece of craft behind that and map that. So I will do that off camera, and I will do a still shot in the end for you. But there we go. There's a card using the Bargello technique to make the background. Hope you like it.